What's up, Heat fans? It's the Heat Report by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, and on today's show, we're actually going to be talking about this Heat team and the potential starting lineup that they might throw out at home when they host the Orlando Magic to kick off this season. And it's very intriguing because we obviously know that Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo are going to be in that starting lineup, but that might be the only guarantee. Five Reasons Sports Network actually reported that they talked to some people in the Heat organization, and they could only guarantee two players that are starting. And that is Jimmy and Bam, obviously your top two players and the two players that you're going to have to rely on to really take you far into the postseason. But I found it very interesting that they would not commit to a full starting lineup, and that leaves three open spots available in the starting group that I think could be filled in a lot of different ways, and that's kind of where I wanted to go with today's show, because last year's starting lineup went fully healthy in the back half of the year after the Terry Rozier trade. Went Rozier, Herro, Jimmy, Jovic, Bam. And I think that's a fair lineup, and if I had to place money, and if you went to Vegas and said, what are the odds on each starting lineup that he could throw out there in night one, that one that I just talked about that started the back half of the year would probably be the leading favorite, because I think they complement each other the best, or kind of similar to that way, as Jovic is that stretch four who's got 6'10", 6'11 size to help on the glass, help Bam switch inside defensively, but also has a clip with him behind the arc as he shot 40% from three last year. So I think Jovic makes a lot of sense to be that starting four. But then you bring in Kel'el Ware to the mix. Second-year Jaime Jaqeuez Jr., who looks like he's on the verge of a breakout season. That's where these things get thrown in here, and it's just a wrench in the system that we don't know who is going to start. And there's been a lot of talk about who should be starting in the backcourt between Herro and Rozier. Should both of them start? Should only one of them start? If that's the case, which person goes to be the sixth man on this team? I have been very open, by the way, that I don't think Herro and Rozier can start together. I made a couple videos fully on just them two and how I don't think they should play together that often, because together as a duo last year, they had a 114 offensive rating and 117 defensive rating. Offensive rating's fine. Defensive rating is atrocious. It's a net rating of -3. So they weren't good and consistent last year together. Well, that's not the only reason why I didn't think they could play together, right? If you go back and remember the video, this is one of my main talking points as well, is that they are two of the worst finishers in the NBA in the restricted area. Tyler Herro last season, in his 41-42 games played, shot 50% in the restricted area. League average, by the way, 59.9%. So he was 9% under league average in terms of finishing at the rim. But Terry Rozier wasn't that much better, folks. He shot 54.5% in the restricted area, making him 5% under league average. So you're talking about two guards that are arguably undersized, not good defensively, and can't finish at the rim paired up together in the backcourt. That's why I think there is a lot of momentum to potentially moving one to sixth man and only having one as a starter. We're going to continue to talk about who should start for the Miami Heat, but let me know your thoughts. Give me a five-man group down in the comments section. Obviously, Jimmy and Bam are shoo-ins, but let me know the other three players that should be playing alongside them to open up that game against the Orlando Magic. Could be Kel'el, could be Jaime, could be the guards. You let me know your thoughts down below. It'll be intriguing to see what Coach Spo ends up doing, because obviously, if I know about the Rozier and Herro concerns playing together and the statistics about them not being able to finish, the defensive liabilities, as Rozier is only 6'2", does have a 6'8" wingspan, +6, I love it, but Herro, who has a negative wingspan at like 6'5", 6'6", with a wingspan of 6'5", 6'4", it isn't good there. So those two could struggle defensively. And then you're really putting a lot of pressure on Nikola Jovic potentially taking a next step defensively, which we do want Jovic to take a step. His number one thing that he needs to do this year is get better defensively and on the glass, so Erik Spoelstra can trust him to close lineups with Bam Adebayo late in games, because offensively, he provides you everything that you'd like to have in a starting four next to Bam and potentially into the closing lineup, which is also something that you do have to keep in mind when talking about the Heat's lineups and rotations, because we have shown this in the past and we have talked about this in the past. But the starting lineup does not always mimic the closing lineup. And Five Reasons Sports Network actually reported that as well, saying that, well, the starting lineup is always likely going to be different than the closing lineup. Because to me, the closing lineup varies from game to game. Jimmy and Bam are always going to be there. But when you think about who is playing well that night, say night one, Tyler Herro is shooting extremely well, 6 of 10 from 3. He's got 18, 19 points entering the final 5 minutes of the game. Well, you're going to put Tyler out there because he's playing extremely well that day. Well, in game 2, Tyler's shooting 2 of 10. And Terry Rozier is on fire. He's got 23 points. He's getting to the rim. He's getting to his mid-range shot. Well, then you're going to want to have Terry Rozier in the closing lineup. So, as a Heat fan, I don't think it should be made out to, like, the biggest deal made, let's just say, of who is starting. Because to me, it will always just matter who is your top 5 group, your lineup, that is going to play the end of these games. And as we've seen reported, it is going to be different on a night-to-night basis due to the fact that players could be having a good game, players could be having a bad game. The only 2 players that are guaranteed to start and guaranteed to finish games, if fully healthy, are Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. We're going to talk about what my starting lineup is going to be here in just a second, but we are sponsored by PrizePicks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app in North America with more than 5 million active members. Basketball season, Heat basketball is almost back, but football is back in the college scene and in the professional scene as well, and you need to be spicing up the way you watch sports on the weekend with PrizePicks. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in up to 100 times your money if you get as little as 4 correct picks. Yes, you heard that correctly. And you just play the numbers, by the way. You don't play any other people like on other apps. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy as well, so that if a player gets hurt and does not return in the first half, you can still get money. Your PrizePicks will still be live if a player leaves in the first half. It doesn't ruin your entire entry. I have an entry for this weekend in football. More than Tyreek Hill, 91.5 receiving yards. More than Tua Tagovailoa, 255.5 passing yards. And then less than on Joe Burrow, 252.5 passing yards. I'm glad football is officially back, so I can place on PrizePicks. I can't wait for basketball to be back because I was kind of a sharp last year on those Heat games, baby. But anyways, join me on PrizePicks. They're offering a really cool deal for all the Heat fans out there. When you download the app today and use code CLNS, you get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, shout out to them. Run your game. All right, as I move forward here and really think about what I would do in a starting lineup role, I've actually talked about this in the past, and I've got a little bit of a wild idea out there, if you will. So my front court was this. It is Jimmy and Bam. Obviously, those 2 are starting. I'm still starting Nikola Jovic at the 4. I am. I think Jovic just brings a lot to the table, and I might be a little biased. I might be the biggest Jovic fan out there. I've always been high on the kid ever since they took him 27th overall in the 2022 NBA draft. But I just think if you allow him to continue to play next to Bam, he just can showcase why his skill set is so important to this team. His ability to facilitate. He's arguably got a top 3 IQ on this basketball team. He is so smart in the game of basketball. And he's also a great facilitator. He's not afraid to grab a rebound on the defensive end and lead the break. And actually, the Heat were just simply better and a more efficient offensive basketball team last year when they allowed him the freedom and creativity to go out and do that. When Spo wasn't saying slow, and he got the board and went and let a transition break, it just adds so much because he could get to the rim with his long strides. He can drop it off to Bam. He could kick it out to a shooter trailing him. Jovic changes the way this Heat basketball team plays, and if he's able to be better defensively, be more assertive as well with his physicality, he can be extremely dynamic in between Jimmy and Bam in this Heat front court. So I'm still going with those 3. The backcourt is where it gets interesting because to me, as I said, I think you could only start one of Terry Rozier and Tyler Herro. So the question is, which one should it be? I'm going Tyler. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this because Herro was really good as a 6th man back in 21-22 when the Heat were the #1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They ended up having one of the best years in team history and made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, just coming up short. And Herro won 6th man of the year that year. Like, I get it. But here's the thing with Tyler. You're paying him $30 million a year. You're not having him come off the bench. But I also think he has displayed the ability to be a distributor, a point guard, if you will. Just think back. And I know it was an inconsistent 5 games for Tyler. I bashed him for that. I said that he should be traded this offseason. But that's not the case. So I got to deal with the hands that were dealt to me. Shout out to Vegas. And guess what? When I saw Herro put up that 24-point game, 14 assists against the Celtics in Game 2 of the first round just 5 or 6 months ago, that was the best game that Tyler Herro has ever played. And it is not realistic to expect him to be able to do that every night and average 10-plus assists and 23 points like Trae Young. That's not his play style. But I think that when he is the ball handler and actually looks to create for others before looking to create for himself, is actually when he's at his best. Because when you have to worry about him passing the ball, that allows defenses to not harp on him as much, which allows him to get to his mid-range shot, his three-point shot more, and not have to worry about double teams because he's actually a threat to pass. So when he was distributing and making plays, I think that's the best way to go about his play style, and it helps the Heat quite a bit. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel because I'm going to give out my final starting lineup position here in just a second. But we cover the Heat on a daily basis, wall-to-wall coverage, no matter what the topic is, whether it's about the Heat, whether about rumors, news, doesn't matter. Hit that sub button, join the channel today. So the final piece of this starting lineup can go a lot of different ways. I am keeping Rozier on the bench after I'm starting Tyler. He's my sixth man. I think he could really flourish in that role too, by the way, when he doesn't have to worry about stepping on Jimmy's toes, Bam's toes offensively, and he can just come off the bench with the second unit with one of Jimmy or Bam, as they're likely going to have one sit, one stay on. Rozier can just come out and cook, give you 18 a night, potentially off the bench. I think he could win Sixth Man of the Year. I also think Jaime Jaqeuez Jr. can win Sixth Man of the Year if he's not the starting 2 guard, which I don't have him being that. My starting 2 is actually Haywood Highsmith. Yes, it might be a little bit of a stunner to you guys, but we've talked about how Duncan Robinson and Herro have not had the best numbers playing together. Now, Duncan was really good as a starter last year, but that was with Terry Rozier and Kyle Lowry at times playing alongside Jimmy and Bam. I don't think Duncan and Tyler can play together. I also think if you leave Duncan on your bench, you have one of the strongest benches in the entire NBA, which is why Highsmith at the 2 gives you a lot of flexibility. You now have a really strong defensive lineup. Yes, you have Highsmith, Jimmy, Bam. Those 3, they can switch. Highsmith can guard a center for a split second, 5 seconds in a shot clock. Obviously, Bam's going to do the most part. But Highsmith's your best point of attack perimeter defender. You have him at the 2 spot. He can guard a point guard. He can grab a shooting guard. He can guard a wing. Jimmy Butler can do the same exact thing. So now you have 2 guys on the perimeter that can defend with Bam and Jovic roaming around inside, and you only have one like crazy defensive liability in Tyler Herro in that guard spot. But the reason why I like starting Haywood Highsmith is I expect him to take an improvement offensively. Shot 40% from 3 last year. If he's able to do that again, but increase his volume and maybe improve a little bit off the dribble, not in terms of ISO people, but at least being a threat, pump fake, drive to the rim, and provide more like that offensively. That gives you more versatility on that end. But like I mentioned, the bench would just be insane. You imagine having Terry Rozier, Jaime Jaqeuez Jr., Duncan Robinson, Alec Burks, Josh Richardson, Kel'el Ware off the bench. Like, that's a pretty strong bench, man. Like, and I know players could be shuffled around, and you could start Jaime, you could start Rozier, and your bench doesn't look as strong. But imagine having those super subs of Rozier, of Jaqeuez, because those are starting caliber players that you can just rotate it around as long as you stay on par in that first initial 5-6 minutes of the game with that starting lineup I projected of Herro, Highsmith, Jovic, Jimmy, and Bam. And then when teams go to their second units, you have Rozier, Jaqeuez, Duncan coming in. Other teams have scrubs coming in. That's when you could start to pull away in a ball game early in the first half. Like, I think it's a bold move. I don't think Spoelstra will do it. But if I had to make a starting lineup, I would at least experiment with a Herro, Highsmith, Jovic, Jimmy, Bam starting group. All right, make sure you are subscribed to the channel because we're going to break down everything around the Miami Heat. And if you have any questions on today's video, you can also follow me on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff. DM me. DMs are open. Comment under any of my tweets. I'll respond. I'm fine with that too. Go follow me over there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because we're going to provide the best Heat analysis and coverage on YouTube and Twitter.